Hi, everybody. Bobby Ogilvy, project manager and professional coach. Today's question: why do companies think they can find unicorns? So, in this case, what I mean by unicorn is the talent unicorn, someone who's exactly these things, but none of these things, and at the exact price point we want. The other type of unicorn you've probably heard of in relation to startups. A unicorn is a company that's valued at $1 billion. The uni being the one, and then the nine zeros after that, and then often increments of that. So a bicorn or a quadricorn or a decacorn, right? Those would be increments of $1 billion, 2, 4, 10, whatever. Anyway, so back to the talent unicorn we're talking about, the labor unicorn. Why do companies think that they can find unicorns? They so what Part of what causes this problem is that top down they can spot the gap area they have. So they think they want someone in they can spot a whole bunch of gaps. It's not just one particular role. We have a whole bunch of gaps here. And so part of it is to often because the HR people doing this are not the experts themselves, or it's been done very quickly. They want to try to find someone that can do all these gaps or many of these gaps at once, and not realizing, one, how much effort it takes, but two, how unreasonable it might be to have someone have expertise in these areas. So, classic thing might be, oh, we want, and they might just say full stack developer, but it might be something that's like, well, they need to be really good at mobile development, and they need to be a security expert, but they also need to be really good at front end development and have a strong web development background. But they also need to know about very large system integration, and list off 4, 5, half a dozen different areas, which are all the different competencies, right? And at some point, it becomes ever more unreasonable that you're going to not only find someone with all these, but then the real limiting factor is then the price point they want. They want to compensate someone at, it can be quite low, or maybe it's just in these regions. On the other end of things, I know that in the big startup hubs of, let's say, North America, there can be some pretty ridiculous salaries for software engineers and other such people, which are in-demand technical labor for startups, right? Yeah, the amount they want to compensate someone in relation to what they're asking doesn't make sense. It isn't really feasible. There can also, in relation to that, be gaps where the amount of years of experience they want don't make sense, which is to say, sometimes they might get kind of the pay band in years of experience right, and it's 2 to 3 years, this kind of pay band. Okay, that makes sense. But then the expertise breadth makes no sense that someone could have these. There's all sorts of ridiculous ones, or they want to pay someone as if they're a junior, but they want to say 5+ years of experience, or you need your PNs, or all sorts of other things. That's part of what this is. So on the company end, I really want to push back and say, are you making feasible expectations here? And one thing the hiring manager or whoever's in charge of this might say is, well, that's all we can afford. It's like, okay, so I understand that's all you can afford. You're not going to find this magical unicorn, you think, this magic mix of everything at once. So given what you do have, what's more important? Do you need more this security and VSLI person, or do you need more front-end UX and mobile development? Which is more important, right? Those are probably more how you want to be thinking about this. You can develop other expertise over time. You could bring on other people over time, but what's going to get you to the next growth milestone that you need? Also, basically, given the target market you're dealing with, how many people are around here and how fast you need someone. I mean, that's a classic thing, right? The more money you put out there and the more obvious it is, the more you're going to draw people in, versus the more kind of normal market or below market something is. And this is standard compensation management. It's not going to be that attractive. This is important stuff. There's another issue too, which has to do more with the escalation battle and ultimately of requirements and kind of fluffed up resumes, and companies not realizing what the job actually takes. So as a project manager, I see this stuff all the time, right? They will say, oh, this IT project manager, and they, 3/4 of the job application will be all this technical stuff. You need this much Java experience, and you need this much that experience. Plus, you need to have an undergrad degree in CS, and maybe a master's too, or software engineering. All this technical experience, but then you list the function of the job itself, and it's like, planning and organizing this, planning and organizing that, team this, organizing that, deadlines this, requirement that, all this management stuff, right? And but yet they still want to have this super high list of IT requirements as if they're totally necessary, yet their job is all management. So that would be one area where it's like, are those technical requirements actually needed, or actually needed to the caliber that you think? And which ones are not so priority, or how can you reduce that down? It's just some really, really unfeasible requirements. It also kind of means that from a competency standpoint, you aren't thinking specifically enough about what the function of the job is. You could see what that might come out of is someone saying, oh, well, we wish someone had knowledge of blah and blah and blah, but the job is actually this. Okay, well, so this is the main thing, right? They need to function to be able to do this. They need these competencies. That's another reason why I like the notion of competencies and people looking at that perspective, because they're a bit more trait-like. It shows where your aptitudes and where you can actually kind of learn and grow is, and also what you're more resilient to kind of effort in doing things in that area are. Which is to say that if things are difficult or hard, someone with a higher aptitude, beyond saying they're naturally kind of better at it, they can, because they draw more energy and make more meaning out of it, they're more resistant when that area gets stressful, right? Whereas when something is very low competency, it's just the opposite, right? You don't have natural aptitude, it's very hard to get effort, but even just working in that area is very kind of almost like confusing and personally incongruent. So even if you can develop enough skills that you're not bad at it, it always kind of just feels weird to you, right? So back to the example we had here of an IT project manager. Do you really want, and I'm gross generalization here, do you want an introverted programmer who can't express well and isn't used to dealing with others? Oh yeah, hey, good programmer, why don't you just manage a team? It's like, those are management competencies that you want. These are people, interpersonal organization, blah 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 blah. All these are the sorts of competencies you want. You don't want these technical competencies, right? If you had to pick between these two buckets of technical competencies and management competencies, this is what you would want, right? Then the hard thing with that is that as companies then start to set these job requirements higher, say you need these and those, sometimes what they call base competencies, base qualifications, asset qualifications. As that starts escalating, going higher and higher, then on the labor market end, people also start fluffing up, and there's just then a natural kind of gamey thing going back and forth. And I wish there was a better way to cut through that, but that's a long-term kind of. I think part of it's a psychometrics problem. I think part of it's an easier and cheaper access to data problem. I think there are some high-grade tools which can do this on an individual level, but I think they're not prolific and accessible enough yet on a more common employee level. So I'm looking forward to when things get back to that price point, because these are kind of these people talent optimization problems, and they really interest me. I think that's probably enough for now. So I guess just to recap. What is a unicorn? It's thinking you're going to get this exact right person with all the right skills, exactly when you need them, exactly at your low, ridiculous price point, and they're just going to magically show up because whatever, we know this is your budget, and someone will just fit it. And then it's the kind of unreasonable, I don't understand, someone doesn't fit my irrational requirements. Yeah, because they're not that feasible, and you don't really want them to be that feasible. So really take a second look and say, do we need all these requirements? The job function is this. Do we really need to have all of that in it? See if you can whittle that down. Try to be as clear and precise on what the job actually does and requires, as opposed to what knowledge you think it should have. And remember, it's easy to look up pay band information. So if you offer some ridiculous amount, of course, no one wants to work for your job for that little. So again, set your expectations properly on all this stuff. So hope you learned something. I'm Bobby Ogilvy, project manager and professional coach. I will talk to you guys again soon.